Stick around, let's go have a look. First of all, how do you recognize a Defender driver? Is it the designer shirt, the logos, the funny t-shirts about off-roading? Is it the designer belt? Is it the cap or the hat or the jacket with Land Rover written on it? No, it could be one of those, but the best way to see it is to look over here or over here. Right in here is a big hole, or if you live in England, it's on this side. And I'll tell you why that is. Come over here. This is a lovely little design feature from Land Rover. This is where you, as you step into the vehicle, it catches on there and it rips a nice little hole. So, good little tip. If you're checking out somebody you think he's a Defender driver, just check over here, nice big hole. You're always wondering about the discussion about Land Rovers being underpowered, and I disagree with that on the Puma, and I'll tell you why. It is the latest engine. It's a Ford engine. It's got a Land Rover sticker on it, badge engineering. The point is, this engine is the same one in the UPS van, in the FedEx van, in the DHL van. Do you know who the fastest people on the road are? The white van man. This is the same engine. So you wouldn't believe it, but the rear view mirrors on the side and in the middle are actually synced up by the factory, which is very clever. Because while you're standing stationary and the engine's turning, if you're at a traffic light or a stop sign, would you believe the side mirror is actually vibrating with the engine. So you can't really see anything, it's all blurred. But that's okay, because the inside mirror is perfectly stable. Now when you're driving along on the highway, would you believe, the side mirrors are perfectly stable in the wind, which gives you a perfect rear view. But the middle mirror is actually vibrating along with the mirror. So it's very cleverly done by Land Rover. I don't know how they've done it, but it's a very good feature. It would be nice to see where you're going, I think, especially when you've got such a small little windscreen. These things are your worst enemy. They last 6 months and they're done. They're totally worn out. So you spend a lot of time replacing them. Luckily, they cost about €3, maybe 4, which is probably why they don't last that long in the first place. I'm sure you all know this. You have to slam the door twice before it closes, maybe 3 times even, finally. But in the end, you finally get the hang of it, where you need to give it a bit of a slam and it stays closed. Not all of them are like this. The newer versions are better, something Land Rover has worked on for the last 30 years. One of the last Land Rovers to be built, 2015 model, they finally got the door right, so you only need to close it once and not twice. When you're driving along, you don't really pay attention to these gauges. This little one in the middle is the most important one. This is the temperature meter. And the reason I say that is because in a normal car, when the engine is up to temperature, the needle gets to the middle and it stays there, and it doesn't move. Not on a Land Rover. If you're on a long hill, this thing will move all the way to the red, and you'll be sweating, and you're wondering, are we going to make it? And then as you crest the hill and go down the other side, it comes back again. So this actually proves that the gauge is working, which is a good thing to know. Why am I holding the seatbelt, you must be asking? Well, the Defender must be one of the only new vehicles off the factory line in the year 2000 and more without one of those little beeping things that remind you to put your seatbelt on, and it would get louder and louder and beep, 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 beep. All the brand new cars, you know what I mean. Defender doesn't have that. You can get in, drive off, and your seatbelt's off, and you won't know about it. And I like that for 2 reasons. For one, we're all adults here. We know we'll put our seatbelt on. And for the second one, it's the only thing holding you in your seat when you're turning around a rolly corner. Tires. Look after your tires. Do you know why? They're expensive, that's why. Very big tires. These are BFGs, BF Goodrich, probably the best go-to tire for off-road work, off-road driving, mud work, all of that. If you're on the road, if you're spending a lot of time on the road, on the highway, not really going off-road much, these are the best tires I can recommend. Continentals, factory fit, which is also a good thing. I guess Land Rover knows a little bit about tires as well. Also handy to know, these tires are really good at picking up these little things when you're driving along, especially if you have this on your driveway, which we have a lot of around here. And you really notice these because while you're driving along, they keep flicking out of the tire into the well, which has no sound protection at all. So you'd suddenly hear this ding, 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 and you think, what the heck is going on? So yeah, don't worry about it. It's just a couple of stones flicking out. What about the shoes? What kind of shoes do you wear driving Land Rover? You might think you wear boots. because you're in the mud and you need to be tough, right? You might think tackies, it's a lot easier. Some neat shoes. No, in fact, if you look outside and it's raining, flip-flops. These are your best friend in the rain if you own an older model, older than a Puma. If you own an old TDI, flip-flops, and I'll tell you why. These lovely flaps, these are great for in the summer, gives you a lot of airflow. In the rain, it's a nightmare. You wouldn't believe how much rain comes in through those flaps as you're driving along, because the water just streams down right through the instrument gauges and fills up there. In fact, Land Rover have thoughtfully provided a little floor mat with a little lip on it, which keeps all the water in it and gives you a good rain gauge. And if that's full up, that's about 50 mils of rain, so it's a good rain gauge. And that's also why they call it a Footwell. Seating position in a Land Rover is always a bit of a challenge because you don't have that much leg room. Having said that, if you have a station wagon, the seat goes back just that little bit more. There's no bulkhead in between. And if you can get hold of these seats, leather from Land Rover, they are the best, most comfortable seats we've ever had. We've been spending whole days on the highway in this car and you come out and your back doesn't hurt, which is really cool. Then there's the doors. They never stay open. This is the reason we park on a bit of a slope, so it keeps the door open while you're loading your car. Normally, this little hinge here will not hold the door and the spare wheel, and the door will keep closing on your back while you're trying to load the vehicle. What you can do, aftermarket, install a strut here which is specially made for the Defender. It's like a shock absorber, and that will help keep your door open because Land Rover hasn't gone to the effort of doing that for you. Another thing people who drive Defenders say is keep your foot off the clutch, and this is true. If you're sliding down a mud slope or a mountain, sure, keep your foot off the clutch, but daily driving, I insist actually keeping my foot on that clutch. So if you don't put your foot on the clutch and ease the gear change and give it a little bit of gas while you're doing that, you'll get a big clunk, and that's not good. That wears out everything, wears out your splines and your diff and your gearbox. So while you're driving along, you need to use the clutch to feather your gear changes, and in fact to become quite attuned to it, to try and give a nice smooth gear change. And that's probably the most satisfying part of driving a Defender, that smooth gear change. When you get it right, it's just perfect. People are inclined when they first get in to just throw it around and they think it's really tough, it's unbreakable, but they'll find out soon enough that things will snap and break, and they'll be in the most awkward places, like right behind the engine or in the gearbox when you have to strip out the whole thing. This is a telltale sign. Listen to this. You hear that? That is a fully functioning door open holder thing. You hear that? This is a 93 model. Look at the door, look at the hinges. This is something you're going to have to live with. All Land Rovers will do this eventually. It's a great design feature, interactive doors. On some of the models, the door will not stay open as well, just like on the rear door, and the door will keep closing on you, so you can't even leave the door open and do something. It's luck of the draw. We're lucky to have a good, fully functioning door clicker. Let's talk about build quality. You see what happens when you slam the door, and you have to, because otherwise you'd have to slam it 3 times to keep it closed. Everything rattles. Panel gaps. Look here. I can put my finger in there and this door is closed. It's as good as it gets, right? The other part of it is when you're driving along, give this a go. Any Land Rover, the latest one or a very old one. If you're driving down the highway, or it's a dirt road, or it's a B road, or it's a little slalom or something, just put your finger here and just rest your finger here while you're driving along. And you will see that the door and the body are constantly doing this all the time. You might be wondering why we drive around with this in the car. In fact, we have 2 of them. This is for the windscreen. This is the windscreen wipers on the inside of the windscreen. This thing mists up so easily, you're unable to see anything. So as well as using up the wiper blades on the outside, you spend a lot of time wiping this. That brings me to the next point. You might be having a really bad day, you got out of bed on the wrong side, a tough day at work, people are not in a good mood, you're feeling grumpy, you're driving along, and suddenly another Defender driver waves at you. You don't even know this guy. Suddenly your whole day changes. Suddenly things are good again. There's a road here which is about 30 kilometers long. Sometimes I do that road 3 times a day. And I see the same guy coming the other way 3 times a day, and we still wave at each other. I've never met the guy. Think about that. Let's say you forgot to bring your watch along. You're wondering what time it is. It's not that hard in a Land Rover, because at a certain time of day, 11 AM or 3 PM for about half an hour, the reflection of the sun off the windscreen will shine onto anything in your path, onto street signs, onto houses and whatever you've got ahead of you. So with that in mind, if you see reflections coming and you see it looks like a big mirror, that's your windscreen. It's big, it's flat, it's not adjustable, but it's nice to know what time it is. The steering wheel. Steering wheel and the clutch. This is perfectly normal amount of play in the steering. When you're driving along the highway, you won't be able to let go of the steering wheel because you will be moving left or right, and there's always this going on. It's quite cool. You think you're in an American movie or something. It's always interactive. The clutch, I don't know if you've noticed it, I haven't, but people who don't drive Defenders keep telling me it's the stiffest clutch they've ever used. Maybe it is, I don't know. You let me know down below. And then these boys. They're your best friend or your worst enemy. When they work properly, you don't even notice it. When they go wrong, you will know about it. If you've ever experienced death wobble or death shake, if you haven't, you know what it's like? You're driving down the road, everything's fine. You hit a little bump which causes you to move like that, normally no big deal, but suddenly you're in an earthquake. The steering wheel shaking, the whole car's shaking, you have no control and you're trying to head for the ditch. So you just brake as hard as you can, you try and swerve out of the way. But it's really frightening the first or second time. You kind of get used to it after a dozen or so. Certain time of day, certain way you're driving, the sun's right here. It's burning your cheek, it's burning your forehead, and you want to really move the sun visor over here. But you're not going to be able to do that, are you? Thanks, Land Rover. You might be wondering why Defender drivers don't listen to the radio much. It's because the radio is garbage. There's no sound coming out of there. It sounds tinny. You can actually hear yourself think louder than the radio sound. But that's why we listen to the engine, because it just sounds so cool. The heater controls on a Puma are also a stuff of legend. I'm not sure why they put a heating dial in here. This is basically an on-off switch. There is no adjustment on the heat. It's full ball or nothing. On the other side, it's impossible to get hot air just blowing down to your feet. It's always a combination of the windscreen or these vents and then a little bit down, so you hardly get any warmth down there. But there's a little joke Land Rover was playing on us all this time. Right there, and you get just heat to your feet. Nice little trick by Land Rover there, but we found it. Why are we down here again? It's the tires. It's the turning circle of a Land Rover. Stuff of legend. If you own a 90, it's fine. If you own a 110, you're in big trouble. In 130, it's impossible to drive. How do you fix this? Spacers. These are not factory original, but there's something you can do to your car which will give you that much more turning circle. This actually moves the wheel out 25 to 30 millimeters, gives you more of a turning circle, and you can actually drive like a normal car. When you're driving along in the summer, sometimes it's 40 degrees and you're behind the wheel the whole day. You want to cool off a bit, and in the older model you don't have air conditioning. How do you fix this? Well, the thing about the Land Rover gearbox, it's right here, it gets really hot. So you're sitting in a bowl of heat here, which doesn't dissipate, which is another reason to wear your flip-flops. But the flaps on the front, just under the windscreen, are there for a reason. They let a lot of airflow through and it draws the air out. The only thing is, if you close the door, obviously you're driving along, and you open the window and you have the flap open as well, the hot air stays right here. It doesn't move through. So what we found is what's better to do is to close the window, and if you have a rear window, open the rear window with the flap open. It draws the air up, pulls the hot air out, and it takes it out behind you a lot better. And you'll find yourself a lot more cool-headed while you're battling those hills. So why do we love this iconic shape so much? It's big, it's blocky, it's very tall, it's taller than I am. What is up with that? I'll tell you why. If you parked in a big parking lot, you could find your car. Everybody else will be looking for where did I park my car, but a Land Rover, oh there it is, I got it. Imagine you're parked on a hill, you want to put the car handbrake on, put on the handbrake and you let that go, and you get that little movement and your heart goes in your mouth and you're not sure if the car's going to stay there or not. So basically what you need to do is keep the car in first gear all the time when you park up, handbrake on, get that little jerk, and then you're fine. But basically you can't really leave the engine running with the car in neutral, handbrake on, you get out the car, because you don't have that confidence in the handbrake. I don't know how you guys feel about it, let me know down below, but it's happened to me once. Handbrake doesn't work properly, put it in first gear on a hill, and the car would start inching its way down the hill as it pushes through the compression of the engine. You know what we see a lot with newcomers to the Defender is that they start putting stuff on their car. Bull bars, winches, roof racks, snorkels, bigger tires, you name it, it's got to go on the car. My best advice to you guys, if you just bought a new Defender, not a new one, but if you just bought a used Defender, drive it around for about a year, maybe two, as it is. Don't change a thing. It's the only way to find out what you really want and what you really need, because you end up with a lot of stuff on here, adds weight, it never gets used. So in the end, you'll find out that the way it came out of the factory as it is, standard, is actually the best way to drive it. So basically in the end what I'm trying to say is, which is the best Defender out there? What do you think is the best Defender? I think you're all doing this at the moment, and that's right. Your Defender is the best one. Doesn't matter if you've seen the one with the best wheels, the best kit, it's sitting nicely, it's got a lift, it's got a winch on the front. Your own Defender is the best Defender. It doesn't matter if it's a Wolf or an Army version, or it's the brand new Lara Croft Special or whatever. It's your own car, and it can be as simple as you like, and that's the way you want it, and that's the beauty of a Defender as well. So I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope you've been entertained and maybe informed a little bit. If you're still here and you've been watching, thanks for watching. I look forward to your comments down below, because there's no bigger discussion point than a Defender, whatever the case. And we love this car for all its faults. We celebrate the faults, actually. To the new guys out there, welcome to the club. Love to meet you, love to see your videos, tell us what you've been doing with your car, and hope to catch you next time.